All right. Okay, so the vast majority of the questions I've been getting lately are on split dosing, and microdosing with Retatrutide and GLP1. So this is a much longer conversation. I usually take a long time to go over it with docs when I explain this, but we'll go through it. One of the reasons you're not going to get this information from a lot of the medical side is because up until like legitimately a month ago, the medical community as a whole thought that hormone therapy was going to cause massive amounts of cancer. That has always been a lie forever. And RFK just came out and was like, that's stupid, and removed the black box label. So now we no longer say that. But because of that, no medical doctor has been taught ever how to do this type of stuff in med school. Some of them learned outside and some specialties have, but this is why it's so difficult for people to get. This is one of the main things I talk about when I teach medical guys how to do this stuff. All right, so let's get into some of this. So people have been talking about microdosing and how it's good or how it's bad for Retatrutide and GLP-1s and stuff like that. So first of all, what is microdosing? Microdosing is taking a very, 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 very small amount of something that we normally would take a whole bunch more of to get a specific effect. So what we really need to understand is that microdosing in a lot of ways isn't a thing. What you're doing is you're saying, okay, I have a goal, and my goal requires this amount of whatever it is, medication, peptide, whatever, to get to my goal. So where we see this the most is in things like psilocybin, where a lot of people, 5 grams, they get to meet God. Not me, maybe not you, I need a lot more, but most people 5 grams will get you there. Okay, so if you take, instead of 5 grams, you take 1,000th of that, and you go, wow, that really helps with my ADD. That really helps with my anxiety. I'm microdosing the normal amount. No, you're not. You're taking the amount you need for the goal you have. So let's kind of function that in and how that works. All right, so when people talk about microdosing, Retatrutide, or GLP-1s or something like that, taking a very, very, very small amount isn't going to do anything. Specifically, let's stick with Retatrutide for just a second. The reason for that is because one of the major things Reta does is it has glucagon activation. It activates the glucagon receptors. What we're actually trying to do, or the goal of a lot of people, whether we're trying to do this, if they understand what they're doing, is to override the insulin functionality. Because when insulin is high, it keeps your body, inhibits glucagon, and glucagon is the goal for a lot of what we're trying to do. So you have to use enough receptor function, you have to use enough peptide to raise the glucagon function above where your fasting insulin results are, because insulin inhibits glucagon. So you kind of have to get above that to make the change happen. So there is a specific amount that you need to do in order to use it. So taking very, very, very small amounts isn't going to get you there. Now, having said that, if your goal is as much weight loss, much fat loss as you can, as fast as you can, then you're going to be using a higher dose. That's kind of an obvious thing. However, if your goal is, for this, I have a lot of women in this case, where it's like, look, we don't need to lose any fat, or they're already really lean. What we do need is we need inflammation inhibition. We need, receptor site function, insulin sensitivity restoration, so that we don't have pain from PMS, from PCOS, from endometriosis. We don't have all over joint pain that like, oh, I hurt all over. That systemic inflammation stuff. You can use a lower amount to manage that, but it's not going to get you that massive amount of visceral fat loss. Again, what is your goal? This is a major thing. This is why I keep hammering on this. Like, you've got to know your goals before you start taking peptides or hormones or drugs or supplements or plan a workout. What are you trying to achieve? Because that's radically dependent upon what you're going to do with it. So again, people are like, well, that's microdosing. No, it's not. It's taking the right amount of peptide or right amount of substance to achieve the goal we're trying to get. You're like, well, you're not going to lose all the fat. Well, that's not the goal. The goal is no PMS issues, no endometriosis issues, no systemic inflammation. So once we get to that function, you can stop. Okay, so one of the big things, well, microdosing is taking something every day. That has nothing to do with microdosing. That's called split dosing. And split dosing is how all hormone therapy should be done. So take a look at testosterone. And this is the thing I see. The reason I use this as an example is because a lot of people who are on testosterone or hormone therapy will go, oh, that makes sense. That's how I feel. So if you do testosterone once a week, which is how the vast majority of medical doctors are doing it, it's the wrong way to do it. Just from a physiological functional standpoint, what happens is that testosterone has a 7-day half-life. So if you take 10 units on Monday, by next Monday, you're at 5 units. If you talk to a lot of people, a lot of men who are on once a week injections, they tell you they feel great on the shot day, great the day after shot day, but the day before shot day, they feel fatigued and kind of run down and kind of blah, because they don't have enough function in them. They have these giant swings from like 1,000 to 500. Well, here's what happens. If you take it twice a week, split dosing, it goes, and so you're staying closer to 1,000, but your downtime, your trough day, is still higher. So you have a larger blood supply of the medication, of the peptide, of the supplement, of whatever, for longer. This is how the body really likes stuff. We don't like giant highs and super lows. We like things kind of within a tighter range. So taking testosterone, the best way to take testosterone is every single day. However, that becomes a pain. And so at least twice a week to kind of split that dose function is usually where people feel the best. So that's like, I take mine 3 times a week, but that's a giant pain in the butt because you're like, what day am I taking it on? So I don't really recommend that. 2 days or every day is the best for hormone therapy like testosterone. So let's look at Retatrutide. So Retatrutide has about a 6-day half-life. And so what ends up happening is that if you take it once a week, you get this giant spike. And then at the end of the week, you're like you're a little bit less than half of what you had when you started. And so you take another giant hit, and so you go up a little bit higher. What happens in this function, some of this you guys might miss, is you miss steady state. It takes you much longer to hit what's called steady state. Steady state is where you take a look at the blood and you go, yep, we have the same amount in the blood all the time. So that's the goal, is to get to steady state. And so as you can understand, taking it every single day, you're going to get to steady state much faster than if you take it once a week, let half of it come out of your body, then you give another giant hit, you come back down to steady state, you go back up, until you like we get that up, and that usually takes 5 to 6 weeks. You can do it in 6 days. What do you want? You want to take 6 weeks to hit steady state, or you want to do it in 6 days? So if you do it every day, you're going to hit steady state much, much faster. So, but again, you can't use the entire 1 week's dose every day. That's obviously not what you're doing. So you have to divide that dose up into a function where it's going to be beneficial for you every day. When you do this, this is, in my opinion, this is the best way to do it because, again, steady state's faster, everything gets there. You have to regulate this not on how much you're taking, but on how you are feeling. Because, and again, I cannot stress this enough, not everyone's body works exactly the same way. If we don't start factoring that in, that not every single human being's body works exactly the same way, we're always going to have problems. Most of the problems that we have with GLP-1s are from the provider, not from the actual product. So what ends up happening is that either they don't recognize this person doesn't make enough bile salts, they don't recognize this person doesn't bring enough protein, they don't have enough hormone, like whatever it is, they didn't recognize that individual. You need to recognize you are an individual and you have a lot of things that are causing differentiation and how your path and how your response to this peptide is going to be than everybody else's. So if you're taking this, and I talk about this all the time. I've got a buddy of mine who's 6'4", 240, big dude. He was taking 7 units a day while his 135 pounds, 5'6" wife was taking 15 units a day because that's where their bodies utilize it the best. So again, one of the reasons you've got to really work with somebody who knows what they're doing on this stuff, because I see so many people that have problems, and I'm like, did you not think that was an issue? They're like, well, I did, but my doctors told me it was fine. We're like, they told me I could either do this dose or not do it, and so I did it anyway. But that's really kind of where we're at. So if you're looking at how you want to do this, once a week dosing definitely works. A lot of research is done on it. A lot of people are doing it. It's the most difficult way to get where you want to go. It's the most, I would tell you, the reason I don't like it is I feel like it is the most dangerous way to do it and the least effective way. When you do a split dose function, especially when you take into the 50 other things that are in account, specifically with GLP-1s and Retatrutide, hormone function, testosterone, and estrogen being very, very critical, protein intake, supplementation intake, bile functionality, liver health, insulin, fasting insulin levels, those things are critical as well. You got to factor all those in. When you do something on a daily basis, it is much easier to regulate your symptoms. So when you start feeling something and you call up and you go, hey, this is what happened today, we can be like, that's fine, keep going. Or we can be like, stop at that dose or reduce the dose or like that type of thing, so we can figure out where things are at. The biggest thing people need to recognize is that just because someone else is using a number, like 2 milligrams, 6 milligrams, 12 milligrams, whatever the number is, doesn't mean that's what you're supposed to take. And so a lot of people will be like, I was really nauseous and my stomach hurt and it was miserable, but I really wanted to lose the weight. So I just stuck with it. And then I had cholecystitis. Then I had liver issues. Then I lost too much muscle mass. I was having trouble standing up. Or like, that's when I started passing out. Yeah. So recognize your body's going to work a little bit differently. And so this is why this is why I like split dosing with everything, everything hormonal. So GLP-1s, so the G from GLP-1 stands for glucagon-like peptide. And so GLP-1s and Retatrutide, that is 100% hormonal function. That's a hormonal therapy, which is also why, and again, you'll hate to hear me say this, but this is why we need to abandon the calorie conversation. The macros you eat, the sugars, the fiber, the protein, the fat, all have hormonal ties. The things you bring in then create a hormonal response within your body that then tells your body what to do. What you're doing with peptides like this, like the GLP-1s and the Retatrutide, is that you're taking control of that food-based hormonal system and you're resetting it the way that's most beneficial to you. If you don't understand that, or your provider doesn't understand that, you're playing with something that you shouldn't probably be playing with. That's why I tell people these are metabolic tools. We shouldn't be giving metabolic tools to people who have never been trained on metabolic function, which is the vast majority of the medical community. Not saying they couldn't, they're all smart enough to do it, like I teach them all the time, but it's just not the way they were taught to do stuff. So, so that's kind of what's going on. But if you guys are looking at this, you're like, well, am I microdosing? But I'm taking it every day. Okay, that's split. Taking things every day or twice a day is technically split dosing. Here's the crazy thing. You can do maximal dosing and microdosing every day. You can do maximal dosing and microdosing once a week or once a month or once a year. The amount you take and how often you take it don't have anything to do with each other. So that's the thing. So people are like, oh, I don't want to microdose. I don't want to take it every day. You're not microdosing. You're trying to achieve steady state as fast and as healthily and as safely as possible. So that's kind of one of those things. So if you've never heard of taking peptides every day, specifically GLP-1s and things like that, you need to kind of look into it. And I would work with somebody who can explain it to you and explain to you how you're going to find out how your body works. Like a lot of times when people work with me, what we start with is I start with the goals call questions. I send this big questionnaire. How do you feel? How do you feel at 2 p.m.? How do you feel at 5 p.m., at 10 a.m.? How do you feel when you wake up? How's your sex drive? How are your workouts? Like all these things, because the other side of this is, again, how do you know if you're doing good or bad? You have to ask you. Like you can't look at a blood report and be like, your numbers have come up. You're doing better. How do you feel? Like I tell people all the time, they're like, well, I've lost this. I'm not eating as much. I'm like, okay, great. That's fantastic. How do you feel? And they're like, I feel like crap. I'm like, well, then we need to change something. Flat out. If they're like, oh man, I feel amazing. Great. Let's stay there. So, again, but if you don't know how you felt before, you don't usually have a reference of how you feel now. And you know who's number one at this? Guys. Straight up. As a guy, I can tell you, I have no idea how I felt last week. If I don't write it down, I'm not going to know. And so you write these things down and then you do it sequentially and you go, oh, look, all of my answers are going in the direction I wanted them to go. My fat is going down. My energy's coming up. Yay. My workouts are getting better. My strength is coming up. Those are the directions I'm trying to go. I have no idea how people do this without tracking it. The things you track, you can make better. If you don't track it, there's no chance you're going to be able to make it better because you don't know where you were a week ago, a month ago, 6 months ago. You have no idea. This is why you need to take blood before you do any of these peptide functions. So if you're working with this or you're taking this and you're not taking your blood, you are really, and you haven't done questionnaires, you haven't written down, journaled where you are and stuff like that, where you're starting, you are really, really, really playing with fire. It's really kind of difficult to do this properly without some type of notes. So start there. If you need to work with somebody, call the office, work with us. So we can do that. There's a couple of guys out who do this pretty well. But you need to make sure that you're doing this right, because what I have seen is a wild amount of variance between what people should be taking and what, because for instance, we've got people who are getting phenomenal results on 1.5 milligrams a week, and other people who aren't getting the results until they get to 5 milligrams a week. So again, that is a 500% difference. Think about that. So If you're not getting the right dose for you, you are not being able to achieve your goals. If you haven't sat down and literally been like, what are my goals? What am I trying to do? If you're like, I'm trying to lose weight, horrible goal. The worst goal in the world is lose weight, because weight is what the scale tells you. Did you lose muscle mass? Did you lose water? Did you lose inflammation? Did you lose fat? Did you lose bone density? Did you lose organ mass? What'd you lose? Just because the numbers changed doesn't mean you've moved in the direction you want to go. If you've gained a pound of fat and lost 3 pounds of muscle, you're down on the scale, but you've ravaged your body. You are not going to have the energy. You're not going to have the function. You're not going to have you're not going to look the way you want to look. Like, this is a terrible, terrible thing. So if you're not tracking it, how do you know? And then, because usually people don't know until they get down to the end, and they're like, "Oh, I look terrible, and I can't move very well, and I'm weak, and I'm tired all the time, and I just like, well, you didn't track it, but you know what you did? You lost half the weight you lost was muscle mass, and half was fat. And guess what's going to happen? If you ever come off the stuff, you're going to get fat really fast, because the muscle was what is your metabolism. It is what is using the ATP. So that's the thing. So anyway. If you guys didn't understand any of the stuff I talked about, work with somebody else. Just don't, or you can spend 6 months learning it. It's up to you. But that's the thing. So make sure you're working with somebody who you understand. And here's the deal. Most of the time, you can figure this out in like a month, maybe 6 weeks. Like, the vast majority of people get this all figured out when I work with in about 6 weeks. And then you don't have to stay with your provider. Okay, pay for the time to learn. Once you've learned, go do it on your own, which is my goal. So if you guys need any help, get with us. If not, good luck. But this is where a lot of the problems and a lot of the negativity and a lot of the lawsuits and a lot of the stuff's coming from. It's not the peptides are harming people. It's that they're being used wrong. So, all right, you guys have a fantastic day. If you have any questions, hit us up. Thanks for your time.